Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today we're going to make grain-free dog treats, all natural. So let's get started. Alright, so what I have here is 1 pound of ground beef, and you can use whatever ground meat you would like to use. This is a grass-fed ground beef that we have on hand. And so what I did was I took a little bit out. I'm setting this aside. Actually, I'll probably add a little bit more to this so I can make some beef sausages for breakfast tomorrow. And then the rest I'm going to turn into dog cookies. Just need a little bit more out of there. So you can use the whole pound. I try to make it a habit of taking a little bit out every time I thaw out some ground beef, because we usually don't need a whole pound. Is quite a bit for both of us for most of our dinners. So then that way I can have some for my breakfast. So you can find a video on the breakfast sausages right up here. Alright, so what you want to do is you really want to try to get all your ingredients in the bowl with the meat before you start mixing, because it's best to mix with your hands. So we're going to go over the ingredients and approximate amounts that you might want to add. Initially, I was going to use the mixed greens blend, but then I got to thinking about something. In these mixed greens are grape leaves, and I looked it up, and sure enough, grape leaves are something you should not be feeding your dogs. So I'm not going to be using the mixed greens blend. However, I do have some other great herbs and stuff I will be adding to this. All right, so in here what I have are some ground seeds, which is hemp, chia, quinoa, and flax. And yes, I just learned that quinoa isn't technically a grain, it is a seed, which makes sense to me. So this can still apply as grain-free. And I'm going to use, and what I did with this is I tried grinding some of it in my Country Living grain mill, but what I find is for especially real fatty type seeds, I would rather use, and this is thank you to my subscribers, a coffee grinder. So that's what I did, is I used a little coffee grinder to grind these seeds up. And I'm not trying to make it a flour, I just want it ground up real, fairly fine. So that worked pretty good. So I'm just going to kind of push that in there. And I'm going to add some great herbs and spices that I know are great for dogs, such as a tablespoon of turmeric, that much again of some garlic, and again with the sage. These are all excellent for dogs. I know because I checked to make sure. Oregano, that's what I meant to grab. I've got some, I need to refill my oregano and my sage container, so. Okay, and some ginger. And all the green herbs are homegrown. The rest of this stuff, like the ginger, the turmeric, I buy these all either on Amazon or in Costco. And then dandelion leaves are another really good thing, so I'm going to add a good old pinch of those in there. Okay, so that does it for my herbs and my spices. Here's my grains over here. So I've got the quinoa, the hemp seed, the chia, and the flax. And then I just already had them all ground up, put it all in my little grain mill, and you saw how that turned out. Now, here's the special ingredient, is I don't have sweet potatoes. My sweet potatoes did horrible this year. Very sad, but it was the first year of me trying it, so I may try again next year. We'll see. But what I have here is some homegrown pumpkin. So, and it's cooked and pureed, and so I'm going to add all that in. That's about, I'd say, a little better than a cup. And then I will probably still put in an egg. Yep, I'm going to put in an egg. You can put as many eggs as you want. I'm going to start with 1 egg, and depending on how moist this ends up being, I may add another. Break that up a little bit with the fork. Okay, and then when it comes to this kind of stuff, like I said, the best way to blend it is with your bare hands. And yes, last time I did a dog cookie video, I had people that were concerned about the garlic and the onion that I put in there. Now, I thought I'd researched the onion and garlic pretty well a while back and found that they were good for dogs, but it does come There is a little bit of concern on the onion. It seems like I keep coming across conflicting stories, but mostly coming across the onion should be avoided with dogs. I still don't think a little bit's going to hurt them, but I decided from here on out I'm only going to put the garlic in their treats. And garlic, yes, is very good for dogs. Again, though, like a lot of things, you just don't want to overdo it on the amount. Okay, this looks like a really good consistency, and this smells good enough to eat. What do you know? All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stoneware cookie sheet, and I will link to this below. I never thought to do it before because initially I got this from Pampered Chef, but you can get these on Amazon. It was one of those rare things that I spent a little bit more on, and I'm really glad I did. So I'm just going to take this whole batch, and I'm going to plop it into the pan, and you can use your hands to sort of press it out. I'm going to use my little short rolling pin. This is why Mr. Rain made it for me. This is really sticky, so and by the way, I put a layer of coconut oil on this pan and on the rolling pin before I got started because I knew this was going to be very sticky. And if I was making this with a flour, I would just sprinkle some rice flour on top to help keep it from being as sticky, but this is working just fine. And I may still make some cookies in the future with the rice flour because I don't think the rice flour is bad for them. However, I wanted to have something that was more of a grain-free kind of thing to show people that if you're trying to go grain-free with your dogs, you can do this. And they did really like those last ones I made. So I'm just going to press it all the way out. You don't really want it too thin. The last ones I made, I got too thin. So I'm going to actually kind of bring this in a little bit. Otherwise, it's more like once they're done, they're kind of almost like paper if you get them too thin. You want a little bit of thickness. And then, of course, how big you make them is going to depend on the size of your dog. We have little dogs, so I cut the cookies rather small. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now the next thing you want to do is you're going to want to cut these out before you bake them. And because this is so soft and I want a fairly decent line between them, I've tried using like a pizza cutter and a knife, and it doesn't make the line quite big enough. So I'm going to use this little silicone spatula to just make some separation there. A knife in some ways will go through it easier, but I want a good thick space between there. These I'm cutting actually a little bigger than I did the last ones. And the thing is if you decide they're still a little bit too big when you go to give them to them, just break them in half or something. Okay, now you see I'm going the other way again. You're still going to want to break these apart once they're baked, but having the lines here is going to make it a lot more easy. Now when I first started making the dog cookies, I used to actually make them like little tiny cookies and roll little balls and then press them out, but it took up so much more room on the cookie sheet as well as a lot more time. So this is the easier way to do it. And what I do is I put it on the wood stove on top of a trivet and just let it bake and just keep my eye on it. And when they're good, when they're real hard and dry, then I know they're ready. You want them thoroughly cooked all the way through and dry all the way through. So I would suggest if you don't have a wood stove and you're not doing it that way, I have to guess because I've never done this in the conventional oven, maybe at about 350, start by baking it for 10 minutes and then check it after that and just keep checking them because these are kind of thin. You want to make sure these are thoroughly cooked and thoroughly dry because we're going to have these set up for long-term shelf life. And I will get to that when these are all done. Let me go put these on the wood stove and then I'll probably take you in there after a while and show you what they look like, and then I'll show you what I do with them when they're all done. All right, I'm in here at the wood stove and the dog cookies are to the point where I can flip them over, and I don't worry about trying to get them flat. I just sort of get my spatula under there and sort of turn them. And then what I do, since I'm doing this on the wood stove, you can break them apart, is what you're going to find is that when you're baking on a wood stove like this, the parts back here are going to cook faster than what's closer to the front. So you're best to also turn the cookie sheet around. Obviously, if you're baking these in a conventional oven, you may not need to worry about flipping them at all because you've got the heat coming down from the top as well as coming up from the bottom. And of course, you won't need to worry about turning the pan either. So you should be able to just set your timer for 10-15 minutes at a time and then just keep checking them. And like I said, I think 350 just to be safe. You could go higher than that, like 400. I think 400 degrees and then checking it at the first 10 minutes should be fine, and then see from there. I always like to err on the side of caution because you also don't want them burnt. They may not like them burnt, and we know that charcoal is a carcinogen. So anyway, and I don't worry about getting them all broke apart. You can just do that a little bit here just to make it easier to blend them about, to mix them about. And then I'm just going to let them keep baking until they're fully dry, and then I will take you back into the kitchen and show you what I do with them once they're dried up. So again, those of you who are new, this is, you know, this actually, some people were wondering about this. This used to be a fireplace. When we bought the place, it had been, the fireplace had been converted into take an insert, and it wasn't arched like this. It was just a short little square fireplace. Well, we decided we wanted to go with a freestanding wood stove, so we had the masonry guy come through and redo all this and make it an archway so that we can put this nice wood stove in here that was flat top, so it'd have plenty of area to cook on, heat water on, make coffee, tea, and all that. And then over here, wrapped in this towel next to one of my salt lamps, is a batch of yogurt. I figured out why sometimes my yogurt turns out runny, and that sometimes I'm just not keeping a consistent enough heat on it. It's really great making yogurt in the wintertime because it's easy for me to do that because I can have the wood stove giving me heat from one side and then just put the salt lamp on the other side. And I don't have to depend on a crock pot or anything like that to do that for me. Alright, well the cookies are all done and I'm ready to put them up. So I want to show you how I'm going to do this. So now you can see these are all very dry and ready to put in my jars. I've let them cool down completely before I do this, so that's a really important thing to know. Now I'm just going to put these into some pint-sized mason jar. I find the pint size is best for a couple of little dogs. Some of these are still kind of on the bigger side because I like to try to spread them out because these are their special little treats when they're, you know, for rewards when they're just, we're trying to train them, or sometimes just to give them because, you know, we like to spoil them now and then. So we don't want them to be too big, but I'll just break them down when I need to and give them each half if they're too big. Okay, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do with the rest of these in a minute. So for now, what I want to do is get a couple of previously used canning jar lids. Alright, many of you have seen me do this many times if you've been following me for a while, and you'll see me do it many more, but there's always new people coming in, and I like to make sure everybody has this really fun tip on how to seal dry goods into jars. So you get your food saver top. I will link to the set of these below where you get the wide mouth and the regular mouth, so you can use it on either size jar. And then take the tip of a brake bleeder, I'll link to this below as well, place firmly in the hole at the top of the food saver lid, and then pump up by hand to 15 psi. Making sure you're holding that firmly in place. And then just pull that off, and now your jar is sealed. And then if you have any writing at the top, you can just take, I know you can use a dry erase marker. I've done that before until I just decided to start doing it this way because I feel like this way it's just a little bit cheaper, so I'm not wasting my good dry erase markers on this. And just kind of rub the rubbing alcohol in. See, I've got it labeled. Grab your rag and then just wipe it off. The previously used canning lids are best for using for dry sealing, and then once you get it all cleaned off, you're ready to write on there dog treats or dog cookies 2017 or 18 or whatever year it is to you now. Now, I've been trying over and over to seal into this particular jar, and it seems I'm having a problem. I can't find anything wrong with the jar. Oh, there's a chip right there. I bet that was the problem. So, let's try this again with this jar. I was afraid there was something wrong with my brake bleeder, and I was getting really disappointed. Let's see if this one works. There we go. Yep, that's all it took was that little tiny chip. So that was a good thing to show on camera. I'm probably not going to show, I'll probably take out the clips where I was trying again and again to save time. There we go, nicely sealed. Now, I'll show you a close-up. It took me, I had to run my finger around here to be able to see that. Right there is that little tiny chip. Just that one little chip. That's why you got to check your jars before canning. Even dry sealing will not seal if you've got the tiniest chip in your jar. So, bummer on that, but we'll find something else to use it for. Don't throw my jars out, even with chips. They always have uses. Now, as far as the cookies sealed into the jar, and I will also put the band on and put that on tight just to ensure that it's going to stay, but they will last for many months on the shelf. They don't need to be refrigerated. However, once you open them up, unless you're going to go through them really fast, you really need to either refrigerate them, or what I like to do is just freeze them. And the dogs don't care if they're frozen. They love them just as much. And so what I do, and that's what I'm going to do with the rest of these, since I don't have enough to fill up a whole jar with these, is I'm just going to add these to my jar of frozen cookies in here. And then I'll give all the crumbs on the pan, I'll just give those to the dogs right away. I'll just dump them into their dog dish, their food bowl. And then, yeah, so keeping them in the freezer once you've opened it up is highly recommended, because I did find that they will mold if not used up right away. So that's just the best idea. All right, so there you have it. Homemade, grain-free dog treats, and you know exactly what's going in here and whether or not it's healthy for your dog. And feel free to mix it up. You can use sweet potato instead of pumpkin. You can use other types of seeds or more types of herbs. Just make sure you look up each thing to find out if it is healthy for your dog. Because there's a lot of things, just like the grape leaves I was mentioning. I wanted to use my mixed greens blend, but then I got thinking about the grape leaves and looked it up, and sure enough, they can be toxic to your dog. They're good for us to eat, but not for your dog. So just make sure you look up each individual thing you're thinking of adding in there and making sure it's good. But I know that all the stuff I used in here is definitely healthy and very beneficial to a dog. So, all right, hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.